Hatchlings, it's Dragonfeather, and welcome back to the channel. And on today's episode, we have a very exciting video because we will be discussing Faerie Dragons! And this little rose quartz dragon means a lot when it comes to Faerie Dragons, and I'll get into that in a second. But basically, we will be covering all about Faerie Dragons, a little bit about them, what they are, how to work with them, all of those good things. But if you are new here, merry meet, my name is Azura. I post new enchanting videos every week, and if you are interested, please hit that subscribe button so you can get all my uploads and that notification bell that probably won't work anyway, but so you never miss an episode. And leave a like on the video if you want to see more videos like this, and leave me a comment down below with your suggestions or your input on this topic. Just a preface for this video, most of what I know about Faerie Dragons comes from my own personal experience. I believe in the craft. Personal experience is the most important thing above anything else. I think it's really important to do your research first before you practice, and I think it's really important to look into certain things before you just start casting magic and summoning things left and right, you know what I mean? For this video, the majority of what I know comes from personal experience and what I have found within video games or games, particularly Dungeons and Dragons. So I just kind of wanted to preface this video with that, but moving forward, this will be on a spiritual discussion. It's not like video game related. Well, it is, but it's not. It's about working with them as spiritual guides and guardians and how you could do the same. So if you are interested, please keep watching. Long story short, I met my Faerie Dragon Guardian Rosie, who I call her, from this little crystal here, and I ended up going to a crystal shop in Washington and bought a couple of crystals, and then I left the store, and as I left the store, I felt called back in there to go and get this crystal, so I walked back in and purchased the crystal, and then later found out that there was a Faerie Dragon spirit attached to it, and that is how I met Rosie. Now, Rosie isn't her real name, it's just how I address her and what I affectionately call her and what I will be referring to her as within this video. My first awareness of Faerie Dragons came from a book that I got when I was very young. I want to say I was in maybe not elementary school, but maybe it was like just going into middle school. But from these books here, we have a practical guide to dragons and we have a practical guide to dragon riding. Now, there really isn't any Faerie Dragon information in this one, I don't believe. I think this one's just on the basic stuff. Yeah, this is just the basic dragons, and again, these books are Dungeon and Dragon related material, so just so you know, that's where I'm getting my information from and how I first discovered Faerie Dragons. So in the second book, a practical guide to dragon riding, there's a little page on here about Faerie Dragons, and I'm sure you've seen this little guy on the internet. This one is probably very common and is a great depiction of Faerie Dragons, and it has just all this cute little information about Faerie Dragons, and I'll go ahead and read it for you. Right here it says, Faerie Dragon, combine the majesty of a dragon and the charm of fairies and you have one of the world's most perfect creatures. The Faerie Dragon is about the size of a small animal. Its size makes it perfect to romp and ally with fairies. It loves mischief and it is a pleasure to encounter if you can find one. These are just like little notes. It says, in my humble opinion, and it says, or a kender. Faerie dragons may be comfortable around the fairy folk, but they are rather shy around other creatures. You might catch sight of their brilliant blue, green, and pink colors and believe you've spotted a butterfly. Its long tail waves and wags, especially when the Faerie Dragon is happy. And we have some other little blips up here too. It says, the Faerie Dragon does indeed have a breath weapon, a cone of euphoria or happiness. One dose and an enemy becomes deliriously happy. It becomes so happy that it chooses not to fight. And its other little blip is, I wouldn't mind being under this spell. Maybe I should think about such a spell for my old mentor, Magick. So I really like these books because it takes the approach of like a student from what he's learned, what he's observed from dragons. Again, it is for game, so it is for Dungeons and Dragons, so it is from that perspective, but I have discovered that with Faerie Dragons, they are very small. When I've met Rosie, she's small. She appears to me like maybe this big, like she can like hang out on my hand, like that's how small she is, and dragons that I work with are not that small, but she is, and she is pink and feathered. She looks like an Asian dragon with like pink feathered wings, which is much like what her little crystal looks like. So that's kind of the visual that I get whenever she comes to me, and I have experienced like the breath power of euphoria, I guess is what you would call it. Now I'm not saying that like she straight up just like blew on me, she's just like feel better. No, she's not like that. You know what I mean? When she entered the room, or when I felt sad, or when I needed some comfort, she was there immediately, and I felt a calm wave of euphoria and happiness, and I was able to kind of shift that mindset just from being in her presence. Whenever Rosie's around, I always feel so calm, so peaceful, so tranquil, and so loved. Fairy dragons, in my experience, are the embodiment of love and light and happiness. So all of that, and they're masters of healing, so they're just pretty much all the good stuff. And I have found that they can be multiple different types, like not like elements, so not like fire fairy dragon, not like that. Like I've never met a fairy dragon besides Rosie, and Rosie is like just about love and light and happiness pretty much, and healing, so that's like the element I associate Rosie with. What I mean is like they can be covered in feathers, or they can be covered in scales, or they can be covered in what would look like butterfly wings, which if you look microscopically at butterfly wings, they are scales, so kind of same thing. I digress. They come in all shapes and sizes and colors. The one that I work with happens to be a very lavender pink, a mixture of pink and purple, very pastel, not very super vibrant, but some of them are very vibrant. Some of them could probably be rainbow or holographic, and some of them could be pastel. So that's kind of just like the general idea that I've had from working with Rosie, and kind of like the experience that I've had personally when working with her. Now, moving on to a little bit more of like the characteristics of the fairy dragon. So like I said, they're typically tiny, and they have, you know, rainbow colors or vibrant colors like blue, green, pink, like really bright colors, or they're like a pastel color. They have that like breath power of euphoria, so instead of breathing fire, they breathe happiness, I guess. But the way I've experienced it isn't like they breathe on me, like literally, they just like, when they're in my presence, I feel that loving, warm, welcoming, calming, tranquil happiness type of thing. So I always feel very euphoric, and especially when I'm very depressed or sad, I call upon Rosie, and Rosie instantly makes me feel better. It's kind of incredible. Seriously blows my mind, and I would not believe that Rosie was real if that has not happened pretty much every time I've called upon her. So there is that. So it's really important to remember that this is like just one like fairy dragon that I'm talking about and my experience with, but if you encounter one, it could be totally different. You could find one that's really big and maybe a different color, I don't know, maybe it has like elements attached to it, I really don't know. The whole bottom line about this is that we don't know. We have no proof if it exists or if it doesn't, so that's why I like to engage with the energies, because engaging with things that like aren't supposed to exist, or like mythical creatures that aren't supposed to exist, like really makes me happy. Like trying to see if they will respond, or if they will work with me, or if they will give me a sign that they're real. Like I live for that shit. It's like literally the foundation of my magical practice, and it stems from working with dragons. If you're going to be working with fairy dragons, it's really important to remember that you will not be successful unless you believe in them. The only reason why I met Rosie is because I followed my intuition with the feeling that I should go back in the store and purchase the crystal and meditate with the crystal, and if I didn't do that, I probably would never have met Rosie. Again, like you and your experience and your feelings and like how you interact with your magic and all of that is so important. Don't ever underestimate the power of your intuition. So please, please, please follow that if you want to work with a fairy dragon. There's really not much more than that, you know, that I know about them like factual wise, other than the fact that they reside in the fairy realm rather than like the draconic realm. I would say that they're more commonly seen with fairies than they are with dragons. They're like the dragon of the fairies. Does that make sense? They're like, if you see a fairy, they're like the dragons that are hanging out with the fairies, you know? It's funny because like now that I think about it, like whenever I've worked with Rosie, Rosie's always come to me by herself, or she's come to me with Monte, or with my dragon guardian. That is like the one I work with regularly. I refer to him as Monte because that term is easy for me to use online in my own practice. I really don't call Monte anymore. I have given Monte a name that I will not be sharing with you. That is what I will refer to my personal dragon guardian as online and in my videos, is as Monte. You don't have to do that. It's what I do, whatever. But that is pretty much my experience when it comes to working with Rosie, is that she'll come to me with Monte or she'll come to me by herself. Pretty much nothing else. My biggest encounters with fairy dragon magic hasn't really been in a way of me purposefully calling upon Rosie. Rosie kind of just shows up when she wants, and that's something that I kind of feel like is true for all dragons. You know, you can call upon them, you could like summon them, you could do whatever, but like at the end of the day, it's like they're not going to come unless they want to. And I think it's really important to like get that in your head, especially if you're going to be working with fairy dragons, is that you literally might not hear anything from them for like years or something. Some of the dragon guardians I've worked with, I haven't met them until like 3-5 years later, so just keep that in mind. It's all about, you know, putting your best foot forward and working with them and giving them offerings and welcoming them into your space and just being really open about it and willing to believe in them, because that's the whole point, you know what I mean? Like, belief, the power of our belief systems are so powerful, like it shapes our reality. You know what I mean? What you believe in is your reality, and like if you believe in something so strongly, no one can change that. You know what I mean? It's a waste of time trying to change someone's beliefs if they are not willing to change their beliefs. That's why they're so powerful. So if you're willing to surrender yourself into believing in the fairy dragon or just in mythical creatures in general to work with them, it's going to make it possible for you. Kind of like those who don't believe in magic will never see it. It's the same type of situation. Moving forward, what can you offer a fairy dragon? Something that I love offering Rosie is roses, pretty much anything that has to do with roses. Rose petals, rose incense, or sometimes I'll burn the rose petals, make my own incense, especially rose water. I find that using rose water, like sprinkling it around my space, like in honor of Rosie, or asking Rosie to charge the rose water with love and light, and then using that to like purify my space is supreme. I do recommend using rose water when you want to work with fairy dragons. Maybe I'm a little bit biased because I met my fairy dragon through a piece of rose quartz. But it's going to be different for everybody, and I think it's just important to try what resonates with you or what you feel called to do, like offering them sparkly stones, like crystals, maybe creating an altar for them in their honor, or creating a space where they can have a place to be honored, a place where you can give them offerings, like maybe give them apples or sweet treats. I find that pretty much anything that works for offering fairies works for offering with fairy dragons too, and pretty much anything that works with offering dragons besides meat works with offerings for fairy dragons as well. Fairy dragons like natural things, so like they like plants, they like apples, so like fruits and vegetables, they like stones, or they like elements like the water or things like that, like pink Himalayan salt, using that to cast a crystal to call upon a fairy dragon. Sublime. But in my practice, they don't really respond to any sort of like animal product, if that makes sense. But that's just my personal experience with them. I think it could be different for a different fairy dragon, but just like every dragon has their own personality, you know what I mean? Rosie is just that way for me, and that's how my practice works. That's kind of like what I'm familiar with when it comes to working with Rosie. If you want to work with them, or if you want to call upon them or invite them into your space, some things that you could do is light a candle for them in your honor. Maybe you buy a candle specifically for working with a fairy dragon. If you want a fairy dragon guardian, or you're really trying to work with one, then light that candle for them every day until they come to you. That might sound intense, or every day you can, you know what I mean? If you can't do it in the physical, before you go to bed, visualize yourself lighting the candle. And honestly, ever since I've started working with Rosie, personally, I actually gravitate towards doing my rituals inside my mind rather than doing them at an altar space. And that is because it really helps me focus my intention, and it really helps me tap into my own magic and not rely on the tools around me. So sure, I'll have Rosie, like my little rose quartz dragon, sitting by my bedside, but before I go to bed I'll visualize like a ritual, and I did this for the new moon that we had recently, and Rosie was present, and that new moon ritual was actually so powerful. It like knocked me out a couple times, and I like woke up multiple times to like finish it. But it's weird because like in the visualization it's like I passed out from like raising so much magical energy, and then I woke up still in the ritual space, if that makes sense, in my mind. I hope that makes sense. Bottom line is, light them a candle and do something to honor them. Maybe create a prayer for them, write a little prayer, maybe a little poem that's like 4 lines, or maybe write them a haiku that you can say to them every night. Talk to them, you know, like they're your friend. I know people say like your dragon guardian isn't your friend. Not all of them will be, but some of them you can establish a friendship with if you're dedicated, you know. It's like it really depends on the dragon and on the individual and on the work that both parties are willing to put in. I think it's really silly to just say dragon guardians are this way and cannot do that and do not do this, because we don't know. Everybody's relationship with their guardians is personal, and it's like the only thing I can really tell you to do is just try to practice and try to call upon them. You know, burning incense for them in their honor, talking to them like I said is really good, and doing things in their honor, like maybe planting a tree, planting a rose bush. You know, they're really into the natural environment. They're very much like fairies in that way, and dragons too, but I feel like fairies are more so connected to like the immediate natural environment, like the smaller natural environment, if that makes sense. Cultivate things for them and to grow your own things to offer them, and all those kinds of things are really great to try and work with them. If you want to try and do a ritual for them, then you can cast a circle. You can use rose water to cast your circle. You can use pink Himalayan salt to cast your circle. You can mix the two to cast your circle, or you can cast your circle however you choose. It's up to you. And then light a candle for them and do a spell in their honor, or do a cleansing spell to make sure that your room is clean. They do like cleaner spaces, so if tidying up your room is a way to show honor and to show welcoming and gratitude for your fairy guardian, then do that. It also is very helpful for just working with mythical creatures in general. I feel like they, generally speaking, will not come to you unless you're outside or in a very clean internal space. Spick and span, they like it. So maybe take a day to clean your room in their honor. Like honestly, it sounds like super lame, but for real though, like they notice. And it's important to remember that fairy dragons are super silent listeners and watchers. So if you are calling upon a fairy guardian, inviting one into your space, chances are they're already there, but they just haven't made themselves known, and perhaps they will not make themselves known until they feel you are ready to hear from them, or until they feel like you've been dedicated enough. Really, I couldn't tell you why they choose to show themselves or not to show themselves. That's their prerogative. But I'm just saying, like, the best thing that we can do as humans who want to work with them is give them offerings, show them honor, do things in their honor, like planting trees, or like planting rose bushes, or, you know, cleaning your room, things like that, like acts of service type thing. You could even write them messages on paper, burn it, and have them receive it that way. There's really, it's endless what you could do to work with them, and it's honestly quite up to you how you want to do it. If you're interested in learning more, I will have an in-depth blog post within the Hatchling clan and UNICOVEN, and you know, in aminos that I'm around, and it will include a ritual, very basic, that you can use step by step, that includes no materials necessary for you to interact with them, and then optional materials if you want. So there will be that detailed ritual walkthrough on Amino, but it's a little too much for this video, the length that I have, so just wanted to give you guys a heads up if you're interested in that. Basically speaking, to kind of just like conclude the whole situation, is that fairy dragons are rare. I don't really know of any other fairy dragons besides Rosie, nor have I encountered them. It's pretty hard to find information on them. There's no historical myths about them that I know of. If you found one, let me know. Most of what I know comes from my personal experience and a little bit of what I've learned online that has to do with Dungeons and Dragons, and the book part that I referenced is huge. It's like monumental for the fairy dragon portion in my practice, because that's how I learned that fairy dragons even like were a concept or like existed. That's how I connected to them. Some people don't use video games or games to connect with their spirituality. I choose to. It works very well for me. If it doesn't for you, then maybe this isn't a type of thing for you, or it might not be the best type of guardian spirit to work with. I think it's really important to remember that consistency is key when you're working with dragons, especially mythical creatures, especially fairy dragons. It's really important to be as calm and as loving as you can when trying to invite these creatures into your space, because again, a lot of people don't believe in them. They are very shy, and it's really important to just kind of connect with them as best as you can by giving them offerings, by doing things in their honor, by creating things for them, by holding sacred space, by lighting candles for them, you name it. At the end of the day, it's really important to remember that my experience is going to be different from yours when it comes to working with fairy dragons. But if you have any questions about fairy dragons, you're more than welcome to leave them down below on this video or over on Amino in the blog post that I've created for you. That will be linked down below as well. And I will do my best to answer any questions, since all that I know pretty much comes from my personal experience. I'll do the best that I can with the knowledge that I have, but again, I do recommend practicing for yourself because that's how you're going to learn the most. Trial and error is really important. If you're going to be working with a creature or a spiritual being, it's not gonna hurt you to leave a little dish of like gummies out, or a little dish of little tarts, or maybe you have some baked goods, or maybe you leave them some rose water that you made from roses in your garden and fresh water from wherever you get your water. Like, it just really is up to you. Like, I can't stress that enough. It is up to you to find them. You know, it's up to you to open that communication and to be open and be willing to believe in them, because unless you take that first step, you'll never see them, you'll never experience them, you'll never discover them, nor will you ever feel their magic. That is pretty much all I have for a basic introduction all about fairy dragons. Again, if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below and let me know. Don't forget to check out the blog post for the in-depth ritual on how to start working with fairy dragons. That will be in Amino, linked down below for you. And I'm super excited to get this video out to you guys. A special thank you to all of you who joined me on the live stream I had on Instagram to get ready for this video. You guys seemed really excited about this video type of content. Please leave a like on the video if you want to hear a story time about how I met my Faerie Dragon Guardian Rosie. I would love to share the story with you guys if you are interested, so leave a like if you want to see that. I hope that you enjoyed this basic introduction. If you want to know a little bit more, or if you have any topics that you want to hear about fairy dragons in the future, let me know as always, and I'd be more than happy to make it happen if enough of you guys are interested. If you want to become a sponsor for the channel, to make these videos possible, or to choose a topic that I cover in the future, go check out my Patreon. All the tiers will be there for you to see how you can become a sponsor of the channel. But until next time, my beans, I love you so very much, you see. I just adore you guys. Thank you so much. I hope that this video brings you some magical wonder. I haven't really found anything else online about fairy dragons in a spiritual sense other than, you know, playing with them in Dungeons and Dragons, so I hope that this video can be resourceful to you, and I hope that we can all chat in the comments down below about the mystery that is fairy dragons. So thank you guys for tuning in. Can't say it enough. Love you guys with all my heart. But until next time, stay geeky, cheeky, and freaky, little hatchlings. But blessed be and bye, my darlings. Oh, and don't forget to say hey to Rosie. Rosie loves you.